I guess the first question I'd like to ask you is to learn a bit more about the backstory behind why you chose to write about your father.
Hmm.
You mentioned in the text that he taught you how to paint.
Yes. Uh,
Um,
Sorry, go ahead.
no, I think it would just be lovely to hear a bit more about your relationship with him. What was it like to learn painting from him?
Yeah. So one of the reasons why I chose to write about him is actually there isn't any print or anything like that written about him yet. And I also felt like this is a very crucial time because he's in his late 70s now, dedicated his whole life to painting. And I was always inspired by his dedication to the traditional form of art. And so I thought like maybe this is a good timing. Also, I know that how do you say it gives the opportunity for the audience outside the community to be able to understand like because there are very few remaining master artists of traditional Thangka painters now surviving in Nepal or in India or other places. There are very few of them who are, because it requires a lot and a lot of like training, and then the whole life itself is kind of like a practice as opposed to just this not no like ending to the to the how do you say development basically. So and another thing was because I also know him very closely as his son as well as his student. So I got to see him from both perspective as a family member as well as an artist teacher from whom I learned the traditional craft when I was growing up like around 13. And actually due to that, probably my like relationship to him is not as father and son but more like a teacher and student, so, until today. And also and still like throughout these years like I saw him how would I put it? The dedication that he had, the seriousness, because Nepal, what is happening is uh, due to the commercialization of traditional art, it became very too commercialized at one point that it became more of a souvenir, tourist souvenir art almost. And a few artists like himself were not like corrupted by this, whatever it was there. They were true to their art as opposed to like opening up shops or galleries or stuff like that, you know. So they were never interested. They consider it more as their like spiritual practice rather than like just yeah, just making art for selling or something like that. So that was another thing I felt like maybe my generation as well as the upcoming generation should know like what kind of artist there has been and what kind of contribution that they have made to this like art form so that we can appreciate their work or learn about them, you know? So I felt like it's important to write about him.
Is Thangka painting changing quite a lot these days?
Um, I mean, technically it could change, but meaning like if we were to look at Thangkas from 14th century up until now, there's been lots of changes during each centuries. But the thing is, change should be for the better as opposed to like degrading. And unfortunately, like there were times like because of the commercialization of I would say Buddhist art in places like Nepal. And also when the like in the 70s, I have this I also worked on an essay recently for one of my exhibition catalog, was mostly about the history of Thangka painting, basically from what I observed while growing up in Nepal, you know, like how 70s like all the Westerners were coming into Nepal, and they were like excited about all of these bright colors, and they were in search of spirituality, looking for something that was, you know, very different and mystical or whatever. And then the commercialization started to happen right after that. And then the whole the authenticity of the art form started degrading, and now we have like so-called Thangka schools and Thangka places where they actually work in assembly line, where people actually go there to learn like certain technique, and then they are just stuck with that particular technique, and there's another department who will do the rest of the work, you know. So that kind of thing is happening a lot. And I think at times I feel like we appreciate works from the past, like 14th, 15th, 16th, 17th century, and appreciate them when we see them in the museums or monasteries or any place, like in the temples. And it would be very sad if this degeneration continues, like down the line, maybe in 50 years, the next generation will come to think of our work, you know, our quality as like something very, very, yeah, degenerated. So I felt like maybe this is something we need to address. And that was also one of my father's wish. And so I spoke to him about it, and then that's how we decided to work on this.
Amazing. Is he still practicing today? Still
Yes,
painting?
he is. He is. And he mostly paints for his own practice. So he used to do commission works before, and still a Thangka painter also needs to paint monastery murals. So even though he's not very fit and young to do all the like climbing and like, you know, in the monasteries, but he does all the designing of the sketches and stuff like that, and instruct other Thangka painters to do the work. Yeah, so he basically only helps them with the designing, and then it's actually done by other people, but under his supervision or something like that.
Amazing. And maybe tell me a little bit about your own practice and how you use what you learned from your father into it.
Yes. So I was also a Thangka painter when I first arrived in America in '98, and I had, because I think it had something to do with I'd never been to an art school. Well, I knew very little about like Western art history or anything like that. And so after I arrived in America, I started interacting with other artists, visiting galleries, visiting museums. And gradually, I was also teaching, instructing traditional Thangka painting in several like Buddhist centers here in California at that time. And uh, accidentally I came across like some students, some people who wanted to learn this technique from me, and they turned out to be like art professors and like artists, contemporary artists basically. So then I was how do you say, over years, like gradually I was brainwashed, and then and then I had this urge to like experiment something outside the tradition, which is like the traditional Thangkas are for one's like spiritual meditational practice, and it's the subject matter and everything is very pretty much predetermined. Whereas then I felt like maybe I can use some of these techniques to, create contemporary works that talks about like current issues, like today, social, personal, like political issues. You know, so that's how I started like experimenting little by exploring. And so that's, and gradually I veered away, and I stopped painting Thangkas sometime around 2008. And then I just started making contemporary works. Yeah. But even after all these, like I still have, and I felt like I was in a very interesting position because I understood all the traditional artists and their practices. So when I went back to Nepal over years, when I was going back and forth, I saw like there were two distinct groups, like traditional artists and contemporary artists. And the traditional artists who were painting Thangkas had no connection whatsoever with the contemporary art scene at all. And they had no idea what was happening. So I wanted to play this role to somehow bridge them and have this communication dialogue started, So that has been the attempt, and that is hopefully like gradually we will be able to do that, so that there's both sides know like what is happening in the other. Yeah.
I think it would be very exciting to see young Thangka painters coming through and
Yes.
emerging into the scene, and
Yeah.
see what they do with the skill set.
Yes.
Yeah, in the future.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for sharing the story about
Thank you.
that you contributed to our book, and
Thank
about
you.
your father.
Yeah, I saw the book. It looks really nice, and hopefully, like you will be able to send us some to Nepal also.
We will send you copies. I just hope the postal service doesn't take too long.
Yes.
Oh, and tell me about the you said that you had a young writer or a young artist that helped you with the piece.
So yeah, my English is not very good sometimes, especially for writing, and I cannot be very articulate. So I have this young artist, a female artist, who's a Nepalese artist, and she just graduated like a couple of years ago or something like that. And we had worked on some other projects also, and she was very, very interesting and very encouraging. So I asked her for help if she would be able to collaborate with me on this.
Yeah,
So
I really like that. So we made sure that we did print her name like on the back cover, in all of the pages.
Yeah, this is really good actually, and it also like in the future we're planning to. I am planning to do like a more extensive details on my father's works and stuff like that. So maybe she will be helping me in the future also. So
amazing.
Yeah.
But she's based in Nepal?
Yeah, she's based in Nepal. She graduated from art school, I think about 2 or 3 years ago. She did her BFA, and she's a practicing artist, as well as like she's also teaching painting to some young students or something like that. Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.